Have you ever wondered what's really going on inside your head? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden scripts that run your brain. Those unconscious rules that literally shape how you see the world, how you judge other people, and, believe it or not, where your best ideas actually come from. Let's get into it.
So, let me just start by asking you a question. Do you think you see the world exactly as it is? Like a perfect, unfiltered, one-to-one copy of reality? Well, the truth is, it's a little more complicated and honestly, a lot more interesting than that.
You see, your brain isn't just a passive camera lens, simply recording whatever's out there. No, it's an active interpreter. It's constantly using these invisible filters, built from all your past experiences, your current mood, your expectations, to construct the reality that you experience every single moment.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by uncovering those invisible filters. Then, we'll see how they push us to make snap judgments about people. From there, we'll dive into the huge gap between how we think we make decisions and what's really going on. And finally, we'll see how understanding all this can actually unlock the path to true creativity and innovation. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Your brain's invisible filters, and how each of us, we build our own personal version of reality.
The official term for all this is perception, and really, it's just the process our brain uses to take in all that raw data from our senses, everything we see, hear, and touch, and then it organizes it, interprets it, and gives it meaning. It's basically how we make sense of, everything.
Now, perception isn't just one thing. It's shaped by three big factors. First, there are factors inside of you, the perceiver. Like if you're in a great mood or if you're really hungry, that changes everything. Then there are factors in the situation, right? You're going to perceive things differently at a loud party than you would in a quiet library. And finally, there are factors in the target itself. Just think about it. A bright red car in a parking lot full of gray cars just jumps out at you. Why? Because it has high contrast. That's a target factor in action.
Okay, now let's see how this all connects to something we do constantly, judging other people. Our brains have actually created this kind of shortcut guide for it, using mental models to quickly figure out why people do the things they do.
A huge piece of this puzzle is something called attribution theory. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. When you see someone do something, your brain immediately tries to figure out the cause. Was it something about them? An internal cause, like their personality? Or was it the situation they were in, an external cause, like just having a bad day?
And we make that call based on three main clues: distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency. So, for instance, let's say an employee who is always on time, that's high consistency, is late one morning. But then you find out everyone else who took that same highway was also late, that's high consensus. You don't blame the employee's personality, right? You blame an external cause, the traffic. But here's the thing. Our brains have this massive glitch, and it's called the fundamental attribution error. We have this powerful, almost automatic tendency to blame the person, not the situation. We overestimate those internal factors, and we just totally forget to think about the external context that might be influencing them. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. To save precious energy, our brains are addicted to using shortcuts. They're called heuristics. And yeah, they're super efficient, but they're also an absolute minefield of potential errors and biases. So first up, we've got the halo effect. This is when we see one great thing about somebody, let's say they're incredibly friendly, and our brain just fills in all the other blanks with more good stuff. We automatically assume, they must also be smart and competent and trustworthy, all because of that one positive first impression. Then you've got contrast effects. See, we almost never judge someone in a vacuum. Nope, our evaluation is totally skewed by whoever we happen to see right before them. A pretty good presentation suddenly seems brilliant if it comes right after a really terrible one. We're not judging them on their own merit, we're judging them in comparison. And of course, there's stereotyping. This is probably the most famous shortcut of them all. It's when we judge an individual person based on our ideas about the group they belong to. It's a very fast way to categorize the world. But as we all know, it's often incredibly inaccurate and deeply unfair. Okay, so we've seen how we judge people. Now let's talk about how we judge situations and make choices. Because there is a massive gap between the perfectly logical way we think we make decisions and the messy, biased reality of how our brains actually work. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd all follow the rational decision-making model. It's this beautiful, clean, six-step process, right? You define the problem, you weigh all your criteria, you evaluate every single option, and then you just logically pick the best one. It's objective, it's thorough, and it's almost never what actually happens.
Because in the real world, our decision-making is just swamped by a whole bunch of cognitive biases. That ideal model assumes we have perfect information and a perfectly logical brain. But reality, it's just a lot messier.
And here are just a few of the mental traps we're always falling into. Overconfidence bias, that's when we think we know way more than we actually do. Anchoring bias gets us stuck on the first piece of information we hear, like the sticker price on a car. Confirmation bias turns us into detectives who only look for clues that prove we were right all along. Availability bias makes us fear shark attacks way more than we fear falling coconuts, just because one is more dramatic and memorable. And escalation of commitment, that's when we keep throwing good money after bad just because we can't admit we made a mistake in the first place.
So, after all that, after seeing how our brains are wired with all these shortcuts and biases, you might be wondering, how do we ever break out of these patterns to think of something new? Well, let's explore the path to creativity and how new ideas are actually born. You know, so many of us think of creativity as this mysterious lightning strike of inspiration, but it turns out it's actually a pretty structured, three-stage process. It all starts with causes, like your own potential and the environment you're in. That leads to specific creative behaviors, and those behaviors, if you get them right, result in creative outcomes, or what we call innovation.
The most important part is that behavior in the middle, and it isn't random at all. It follows 4 pretty clear stages. First, you have to actually formulate the problem, identify what you're trying to solve. Then you gather information, letting ideas just kind of marinate. Next comes the fun part, the idea generation itself. And finally, and this is so crucial, you have to evaluate those ideas to find the one that has real potential.
And that leads us to the final and maybe the most important part of this whole journey. Because having a great idea is one thing, but turning that idea into a real-world innovation, that's what gives it impact.
Here's the key difference, and it's so simple but so important. A creative idea is just something new, something original. But an innovation is an idea that is both novel and useful. It has to actually solve a real problem or meet a real need. An idea that's just weird isn't an innovation. An idea that actually helps someone, that is. So we've seen how our brain's hidden scripts shape everything. Our perception, our judgments, our decisions. They are incredibly powerful, but they are not our destiny. The very first step to getting around them is just knowing that they're there. And that brings me to my last question for you. Now that you can see them, what invisible filter are you going to challenge today?